Hello, welcome to SquishiVision. We're about to react to the last episode of Ms. Marvel. Uh, no normal, no normal. Again, doing it with my backup laptop because I still haven't got my new computer built, but it's getting better. I have components. Anyway, you don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about my reaction to Ms. Marvel. I assume that's why you're watching this. This is my mid reaction. Just finished watching the last episode. Gonna give my thoughts, kind of completely as and when I think of them. I haven't written anything down. Um, let's start with the negatives, so I can pretend we didn't exist. This series has done a relatively okay job of its depiction of being a Muslim. Good job of Pakistani stuff, but obviously, like, I don't know what it is to be American Pakistani. I know what it's like to be British Pakistani, so I think all the things I've had issues with about the representation of Pakistani culture might be just because I'm expecting British Pakistani content being what's my lived experiences, and I'm having to like transfer it over to American stuff. But the Islam stuff is, universal for the most part. Um, and so, been assessing that throughout, giving it relatively higher than 5 scores. This is probably the first lower than 5 score because in terms of Islam, there's two major things which I'm quite annoyed about. So the first one is obviously the Nakia boyfriend thing. I mean, it's not clear slash explicit if she's being serious or if this is just part of the ploy to distract the damage control agents. I'm headcanon it as the latter, but the way the show signals the scene, it doesn't make it clear in it to anyone who wouldn't think different. They wouldn't assume otherwise. But you know, it annoys me because that's not how Muslim courtship works. That concept isn't entirely Western. Well, not entirely Western, but it's certainly not Pakistani. It's certainly not an Islamic thing. The way we find life partners is different, and that's perfectly valid and okay. So for me, this is whitewashing. This is westernizing a concept, which happens. This thing that happens a lot when you have in Western originated shows that focus on Islamic characters. They tend to have these things come through to make it relatable. And they're like, well, we can't. There's always, I don't know why, whenever they focus on Muslim, especially Muslim teens or drama, and they want to focus on some kind of relationship stuff, they have to put in the concept of dating, which is a way that courtship works in certain cultures, but there's not enough focus on the other ways that it can work in other cultures. And this was an opportunity to kind of show or emphasize that. Um, so it annoys me when they have to. And this is a particularly egregious example because it doesn't actually service the plot. It's not like that's not a subplot. It's not a character arc. In fact, I don't think it's anti her character arc of being someone who clearly outwardly embraces her religion. She's a hijabi. She practices to an extent, whilst also being able to be free with kind of she practices to an extent, but she's clearly like comfortable with her own individual identity as well. But she has that kind of political aspect to her. It's kind of so the whole kind of and she's very comfortable about that kind of degree of activism that makes it odd that she would then assimilate certain aspects of the cultures that. And I'm not saying this doesn't ever happen in reality, but Muslims are diverse and people have different kind of approaches to different concepts. But perfection isn't meant to be a mirror representation of reality. It's a deliberate. You deliberately put in the show what message on, what depiction you want to push. And like I was saying, there's plenty of other depictions which explore this that kind of insinuate that this is either normal or this is what should be normal. This is how Muslims should, Muslim thing is, the point I'm trying to make is the more you put in to there is a agenda about Muslims needing to assimilate, and so the more you depict Muslims in Western shows as having attributes of cultures that they have kind of moved to in the nuance to it. Like, to be clear, as I mentioned in previous episodes, I am British. I've always lived in Britain. I've never lived in Pakistan. I visited it once, like 24 years ago. Um, and so, I don't necessarily culturally identify, or I haven't really much as Pakistani, because there's not much that culture that the only parts of culture that I kind of, I mean, I have aspects of that culture by being brought up in a Pakistani family, but I don't identify as being that. I also don't really identify as being particularly British. I identify as kind of my unique kind of in between area, um, which means that there are parts of how I live my life that are clearly informed by Western culture, and I don't, but not in a way which I think is necessarily assimilation. It's me having chosen that, but I'm a real person. In fiction, if you consistently show this, you're kind of peddling the aspect that you should always assimilate certain things, and I think, yeah, this. So I don't know how, I don't know if I'm wording this right, but I do find it kind of problematic. So I find it's particularly a great case to say because it's shoehorned in. There's no plot. If you cut the scene so it didn't have Miguel in there, or if Miguel was there for a different reason, or if it wasn't even that, she was stalling and the room opened and it literally was just a stall cupboard, that would have the exact same effect. So clearly there was a additional thing put in there. But again, like, I don't. She never explicitly, in any way which couldn't also be interpreted as a ploy, identifies that. He later on does say that she is his girlfriend, but doesn't. But that's what he seems to possibly think. Yeah. The last, the other part, which I guess is more, the other part is the kind of Kamala Cameron thing, which again is odd. I didn't like it when it was in the second episode, where they were basically acting as if they were like dating, and again, it's kind of whitewashing, westernizing the character in a way where there was an opportunity to actually show what, at least I understand, most majority of Pakistani Muslims would actually call, which is again, there's not enough depiction of that alternative, not alternative, but there's multiple ways you can call it, and there's not enough depiction of that kind of thing in Western mainstream media. This is an opportunity to do that, and they didn't do that. And when Cameron was in the second episode, it was portrayed as it could have been two non-Muslim white characters, and it would have told exactly the same. It's very weird. But then obviously, them get a twist at the end that despite the fact that they probably do have attraction to each other, there was also that other kind of he played another different role in her life, and that was kind of fine. That kind of, I think, recontextualized that. But then they have this moment, and it's like, it the Islamic approach to relationships is very much about it very much kind of emphasizes, commitment to the point of, relationship should be post-marital, and that doesn't mean you can't be friends with people or even court them before you're married. It doesn't mean to marry a stranger, but you should only really commit to certain aspects after you've married. And so the fact that the show doesn't, they have a moment where they have a moment, and it's like, but also it's weird because at that point it seemed clear that while she still kind of cared about Cameron to an extent, there was clearly an opposing ideology friction thing between them, which was fine with them. That seemed very realistic, and there was nothing until that scene. There was nothing to imply that they have that kind of aspect to their character, and it just seemed odd for that in there. I don't know if it's meant to set up something else. I really hope it's not. I just, again, it's one of the things that makes the show. It would make the show inaccessible, and it turns away a lot of Muslims. And if a show focuses on a Muslim character, you shouldn't be doing anything which turns away Muslims when it only really services a Western approach to courtship. If that makes sense, I'm trying to word this in a way which is understandable to people who aren't from my perspective, but I just didn't like it. But those are two things. I'll move on to controversial positive. The rest of the show was quite good. I do love the kind of whole kind of outsmarting the damage control agents, and fighting against them, and like playing against their kind of overconfident nature, tricking them with certain aspects. So I do love the kind of the nice kind of subtle hints to bigotry. Like, I mean, they assume that that bomb like device was a bomb, and I guess that's not necessarily signed and isn't necessarily a kind of. I don't think that's meant to be commentary on perception of bigotry, because it device, I think, was clearly meant to be a bomb anyway. I was meant to trick them into thinking it was a bomb, and then it was like, haha, surprise, it's actually a speaker. It was still funny. But the bit where she was like, it's dangerous when these kind of people get powers, and the other age was like, what do you mean these kind of people? And she just clarified she means kids, but clearly, she clearly has some degree of kind of bigotry towards her, with how she's been acting in a way which is very kind of white supremacist cop characteristics. And she continues to walk through most of her shoes on, which is just terrible. But yeah, there's a lot of politicized coded things in the show. The whole thing about groups of people forming barriers around someone that the cops are trying to arrest. And yes, I am calling the agents cops, because the show kind of cowers away from making that connection. In fact, actually, the person who kind of it's Cameron who compares them to cops, and Kamala corrects them, which is a bit icky. Like, come on, I mean, Marvel, you could have, I don't think it's particularly risky, or at least you're carrying away from the correct amount of risk if you're gonna tell this story, but then avoid any commentary on the current political situation around cops towards American Muslims by using your fictional agency as a kind of skin. And then also, yeah, I guess in the same show, have the cops being shown as a bit more honourable. But I guess, Marvel is, as a massive kind of, politically, I guess, is going to still car away from going that level of showing corrupt cops. And I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm disappointed. I mean, again, I think, if you're gonna try and depict all of these. I mean, like, with Black, this such like with Black Panther, they're happy to kind of comment on colonialism, and things like that. But apparently, straight out criticizing cop culture is I think, I don't know. I guess they're trying not to alienate all the cops. I mean, Captain Marvel, the Marvels is going to be an interesting show. I'll get, well, I'm Marvel's commentator now because I don't have very much to say, but obviously the sting of this, the post-credit scene teases a connection when we see Carol Danvers appear with her longer hair again. Apparently swapping places with Kamala, but it's gonna be interesting because Captain Marvel was perhaps one of the most blatantly pro-American military films, to the point where it was funded in part by the military, and they had made all these adverts that were pro-American Air Force, and then obviously you're gonna have the Marvels, which is gonna feature these three leads, including a black woman and a Muslim teenager. It's like, well, you can't really have a show where one of the protagonists is a Muslim American teenager and make it pro-American military throughout. There has to be some of a critique there, otherwise you're doing disservice. And that kind of is, like, they can, I guess they're kind of still laying that in here by not outwardly only having the kind of morally great character make the comparison between cops and the agency, when really the agents are playing the same role as kind of cops and immigration control would do in America, and it's kind of this whole same culture. But the show kind of covers away from going throughout with that. But still, the show, a more subtextual reading is still, a cab, screw the cops. Am I right? So that was a fun kind of thing, and yeah. Oh yeah, because I commented in the last episode, we kind of did wrap up a lot of the arc. So I guess this was more. I guess this is kind of, if we take each 2 episodes to be an act, this is the second half of the third act. In which case, I guess it does make sense in the. I mean, if it was a film, the resolution that we would have got in the last episode would have happened, I guess, 20 minutes later, than this would be like the last 10, 15 minutes of the film, and we have a kind of I guess the victory lap. So this is kind of the victory lap of the show, which I guess it works. It makes sense. It's a valid way to structure a story, especially a TV show. And this didn't feel like I was worried this episode feels superfluous because a lot of what was wrapped up, but actually no, this felt very self-contained, and so it felt fine. It felt like an epilogue in that sense, where we had those 5 episodes, and this is like epilogue, which kind of sets up the future. Speaking of epilogues, there was a 2 week later scene where where Bruno is commenting about they might be slightly wrong with what they kind of felt about the slightly wrong about the kind of genetic code, which I was thinking, oh, is it going to reveal that she's actually inhuman like she is in the comics? I'm like, oh, this actually quite good because Inhumans, I've not actually seen the Inhumans yet. I need to parallels very much misaligned. But they were done very, very, very well, and they're very big part of the Agents of Shield. And I was like, oh, this is gonna finally kind of bring back all the Agents of Shield stuff back into the um, MCU main front because those characters were great, and it's a shame that they're kind of not really acknowledging a lot of that. But no, they went in a different direction where they said you've got our mutation, and then you've very pointed X-Men theme that was meant to be a hard cut transaction, not a swipe. That kind of ruined that whole effect that I was going for there. And that's the wrong thing I switched back to, but anyway, never mind. Yeah, it played the X-Men '97 theme, which it's interesting bit of meta because that theme only really works, if you grew up watching the show, which I think probably a lot of people who were watching this did, but I guess it is one of the most iconic. I think it's definitely one of the most. I think it is probably the most iconic Marvel pre MCU, probably the most iconic Marvel sound. And so it's pretty obvious. Like, if you wanna suggest the X-Men in an audio passion, you play the X-Men '97 theme, and you go na na na. And so yeah, it wasn't Shang-Chi Mutants X-Men theme. I think in this continuity, she's going to be probably a proto X-Men, and we're kind of very much pushing towards that. Obviously, we had Professor X, and explicit reference to the X-Men in Doctor Strange, and now it's kind of going there. So that's kind of cool. It makes sense that she's a mutant because obviously it implies that it is why none of the other members of the family can put on a bracelet and have the powers. It's why it kind of skipped, I guess, 2 generations, and then she had it, and that's kind of how mutations work. I think I'm not a genetical scientist, so that was decent. I hate TikTok. That's all I'm gonna put on that. I hate how prominent it is on here. But it was funny when Zoe just randomly turned up like, yeah, I was in the place anyway. That's why I'm in this finale. In fact, yeah, I did it like twice, and it was funny both times. When Mira turned up, and he's like, yeah, just turn up as well. We were characters in this finale, so here I am. I want to know. I forget what her name is now, but the lead agent. I want to look at what her game plan was because clearly she must know it was career suicide to go against an order in such a way that she did. Um, anyway, she must really hate superheroes, or I guess Pakistani superheroes. It is nice that also okay. Probably the most unrealistic part of this episode is how quickly her mother went from being pressurizing, protective, and unsupportive to being completely supportive. It took me about good 5-10 years to wear down my parents to make them supportive of my life choices, and Kamal managed it overnight. But I guess it kind of helps when you have such a fantastical element like superheroes that's directly connected to your family heritage. I mean, I think that's a pretty hard thing to deny. But that's how this is a fantasy when the Pakistani mother becomes that supportive of her daughter that quickly. What else can I comment on this episode? Also, Bruno, he's the only person who got full on like butt whipped by a rifle. Also, I'm glad that he did actually go to Caltech and we did this whole thing of like, actually, no, I'm going to reject this promising future just because I want to stick with my friends because friends are more important. Malarkey, nah. hate it. Such a realistic trope. I'm glad he did decide to go there. Weird that it never really played a bigger conflict in the show, actually. It just, in fact, I didn't even play any role in the show, to be honest, apart from making him feeling a bit annoyed that he couldn't talk about his kind of things with Kamala, but that didn't really play a conflict. A lot of things kind of stuff didn't pay off, but I guess it's fine. Yeah, so as a show, I think the show, I enjoyed the show. It was decent. It 60-70%, which I guess is kind of higher than most depictions of Pakistanis slash Muslims in Western origin media. It could be better, especially when there's so many Muslims were authors in this show. It's been disappointing that it wasn't higher than that. You'd think it would have been better, and I'm kind of concerned about some things to set up, but I think for the most part, very well. And I am more excited than I am not that a Muslim superhero is going to be a lead character in a blockbuster superhero film. It's a bit of a shame that she has to share it with two other characters. One established is probably going to get like third billing, but I still think that's kind of impressive. Anyway, I have class in an hour, so I should probably get going. But that's my thoughts on the series. Thanks for tuning in. I don't actually know what. I don't think anything else is actually coming up in next week. I don't know when the next thing I'm reacting to. I still see Jurassic Park Dominion, so maybe that'll happen next week. I don't think there's any shows. I know there's. What is the next Marvel show? I think it's like She-Hulk, isn't it? But I don't think it's coming out anytime soon. I don't actually know. But yeah, I will see you guys. Okay, I'll try to like go watch Jurassic Park Dominion next week. So I'll see you there.